You know the saying, money talks, and in what's become the most expensive midterm election in history, probably exponentially at this point, the political ads this year have been talking a lot and a lot and a lot. And we've seen almost $3 billion spent on the air ahead of next week's midterm elections as each side looks to take the edge. Joining me to take a deeper look at the key themes we've seen on the airwaves this year is our political team, Mark Murray, Carrie Dan, Ben Commissar, all from the political unit. Think of this as like our version of the Ringer. A Ringer staff man. You take that, Bill Simmons. The first sort of theme that you can't avoid when it comes to these ads is health care. We've got a bunch here from Texas to West Virginia. It works in red states. It works in blue states for Democrats. Let's play some of them.
John Culberson voted to let insurance companies charge people 50 and over 5 times more than younger people, to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions.
Now the threat is Patrick Morrissey's lawsuit to take away health care from people with pre-existing conditions.
Here's the truth. Kevin Cramer voted for guaranteed coverage for pre-existing conditions.
In Wisconsin, pre-existing conditions are covered. And as long as I'm governor, they always will be.
There's a lot of fake news and alternative facts out there, but I'm guessing polls, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, also coverage for pre-existing conditions is popular, Mark Murray.
Not only the pre-existing conditions, and yes, it's the most popular part of the Obamacare, but Obamacare overall is popular. And that, to me, is like the biggest change from the 2012, even 2016 cycles up until now. What's also notable, Chuck, is that not only do you end up having Obamacare popular, but the Republican plan to repeal and replace is super unpopular, even more unpopular than President Trump, which is one of the big reasons why Democrats have leaned into this.
Carrie, Republicans now almost in this last 2 weeks are going, we love pre-existing conditions. We've supported it. And like you've had the vice president. What are they basing this on? Like what proof is there that they have been supportive of this?
I think that they're realizing that they got beat on the messaging on this from the very beginning of this campaign. Democrats have been messaging on this since the primaries, and Republicans are finally realizing this is really, really negative for us, and we're going to grasp at anything that we can do. I mean, especially when you have races like that Manchin ad. He's running against Morrissey, an attorney general whose state has joined an anti-ACA lawsuit. They're having to message in whatever way they can, grasping at whatever straws to talk about this. And the other message that they're also doing on healthcare is that Democrats want government-run healthcare. It's going to take away your employer-based healthcare. It's going to take away your Medicare. So there's a negative messaging as well. It's very hypothetical, as opposed to Democrats who can kind of point to these lawsuits and point to actual votes from the House of Representatives and say they voted against the ACA.
Ben, have you seen a Republican candidate, an elected who has been on defense on this, effectively push back on this pre-existing condition hit?
I mean, that's the big question. I mean, they, like Carrie said, hypotheticals are one thing. You know, these votes that Democrats can push to is important. I mean, you look at, I think, some of the statewide stuff, you can kind of push it, you can kind of work on the margins a little more. But when there's just overwhelming, Democratic hits left and right on this issue, it doesn't seem like that many Republicans have really inoculated themselves just yet.
Yeah, I was just going to say, have you seen, can you think of one? I mean, I was thinking, boy, did Scott Walker try? But he hasn't. He's flip-flopped. They all have. And it's his governor's races and Senate and House races.
They're all employing the Jedi mind trick. Like, hey, these are not the pre-existing conditions you're looking for type of deal. Now, look, to me, the one legitimate one is when Republicans say that Democratic candidates who do support Medicare for all, who do support that kind of pure Bernie Sanders, it's like you're for a $32 trillion takeover.
That's the better. That's
the one. But where Republicans have muddied this message is that they're attacking Democrats who don't support the Bernie Sanders Medicare for all plan with it.
And that's about the best health care pushback they've had, isn't it, on Medicare for all?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen that in every district, even when they're, like Mark said, people that aren't supporting this, you're getting lumped together by, they support Democrats who would. So it's this guilt by association game that doesn't stick as hard.
Well, we shall see. The other thing that's been notable is candidates are embracing their own diversity and realizing that in many cases this might be surprising. You might see somebody that looks like me running in, say, Kansas. And they've been pretty effective. There's a few examples here from Texas to Wisconsin and Kansas. Take a look.
And that's me, MJ Hagar, an Air Force combat veteran and a mom. This door behind me is from my Pavehawk helicopter. It's all that's left of the aircraft that I was flying that day.
I work every day so that me and my son have insurance. I've been an iron worker for 20 years.
Truth is, I've had to fight my whole life. because of who I am, who I love, and where I started.
And again, Carrie Dan, just to Sharice Davids, who's the last person there, she's running in which district? That's not on the coast of the United States of America? Right.
And she's LGBT. She's a former MMA fighter. She doesn't look like your generic member of Congress, average age, 58 years old. It looks
Frankly, had been generic, older, white guy is what the DCCC would have said, oh, that's how you win in that district, right, Carrie? And that's turning out not to be the case.
I think one thing about these biographical ads that has been very effective is all of those that you showed were kind of early in the campaign, and they were candidates who are defining themselves. These are all candidates who have had so much negativity dumped on them from outside groups. $110 million from the Congressional Leadership Fund has been spent in these swing districts. Some of those attacks, I think, aren't going to stick as well because somebody like MJ Hagar, somebody like Amy McGrath have been defining themselves and telling their own story since they entered the campaign. And by the way, doing that in a very viral way means that they've raised ridiculous amounts of money from all over the country because they've been talking about their story and how unique it is.
And that is one of the other stories of this cycle. Every new candidate wants the viral. It's like they're all trying to be Alexandria Ocasio. Cortez. All right. I would say Cortez Ocasio. My apologies there, because all she could do was a viral video. It's the New York City media market, and it went like gangbusters. Who's been the most effective after her?
Well, I think even before her, though, you have people like Randy Bryce, who showed up in Paul Ryan's district. I mean, Democrats aren't supposed to compete in Paul Ryan's district. Democrats weren't supposed to compete in Kentucky, where Amy McGrath is running. But these are two candidates that had these big viral ads that not only introduced themselves and laid the groundwork, as Carrie was saying, but also really brought their names and faces to a national donor base that has helped just let them fundraise this green wave that we've seen, and let them kind of, define their stories with millions and millions of dollars.
Mark, I do not think people understand how unusual it is that collectively the Democrats are outspending the Republicans without, it's not because of a super PAC. Like, it's not because of a couple of billionaires. They're doing it in hard money, which is money that you raise basically in only $2,500 chunks.
And we're going to see that replicate in the 2020 cycle. I mean, the amount of money that the eventual Democratic nominee is going to have is going to be astronomical. So much of it is due to President Trump. I mean, if there is someone who's like, you got your paycheck, and if you don't like the president, you're sending it to Democratic candidates. What I will say, that those three ads that we just played, the viral videos, only one of those is a current frontrunner in this general election, Sharice Davids. You have Randy Bryce, and you also have MJ Hagar. Close. But to me, like, what was really important about those introductory videos, that helped them win primaries and helped them raise a lot of money. It might not give you the general election, but to be able to get those other really important components, and that's what I'm going to be looking for ahead in 2020.
All right, another set of ads that we're seeing recently, and this comes from incumbent Democrats who are afraid of the national image. I think we'll play a couple here that show that, including one from Claire McCaskill.
By doing the hard work of listening and compromise. That happens in the middle. That's where I live and work for you.
I voted for and supported President Trump's immigration bill, including the funding for the border wall.
Ben, the Claire McCaskill thing, not surprising, but late in the game, it seems. She's sort of suddenly made this turn a little bit later than I expected.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's obviously a million different ways to skin the cat here, and you're seeing with these, whether it's the Kavanaugh bump that that Republicans were talking about a couple weeks ago. I mean, there's been a little bit of a tightening, but still, I mean, at the end of the day, these campaigns are going to be won in these red states for these where Trump won, going to be won by convincing voters who typically vote for Republicans, simply vote for President Trump. So they need to do something to bring those people on board.
What I've noticed about this, Mark, is that it usually is a tell about what voting group they're missing. So Kirsten Sinema said, I don't know if I'm a proud Democrat. Okay, it's all about independence. It looks like in Missouri, it's that independent, right-leaning, college-educated male that she's losing right now.
Yeah, so whether you're Kirsten Sinema in Arizona or Phil Bredesen in Tennessee, your path to victory in these Republican states is, I have to clean up among independents. And sometimes the best way to actually do that is, hey, I'm not beholden to any party at all. I'm kind of like you, independent voter. Please vote for me. And also to still peel off 10, 12, 15% of Republicans. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. It does seem that Claire McCaskill is a very very jarring turn, but that is the math to be able to win in those states.
And Kerry, there's a reason for this. Let me play this Trump super PAC, Trump-connected super PAC ad. This is the message, essentially the national message that the president and some of his Republican allies are trying to send about the Democratic leadership. Take a look.
The screaming, the violence, the smears, and death threats. The far left moving to socialism, undefended open borders, immediate tax increases, 100% government-run health care.
So that's, I have to say, Kerry, the only thing, I get why that's effective for the Trump brand. Mm-hmm. Does every Republican want to have that kind of ad running?
It's sort of a Mad Libs of like conservative politics and like every single possible buzzword.
Sean Hannity buzzword. Check.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Okay, right. I mean, I think that the logic is that fear is a great motivator, and nobody looked at violence in the wake of either the Kavanaugh hearings or other, these seminal moments in American history and felt good about, either riots or violence in the streets. At the same time, I don't know if this, I think it only sticks in places depending on a candidate that voters feel maybe would be complicit with that kind of stuff. There's an ad like that running in Florida, for example, Rick Scott running one against Bill Nelson with very similar imagery about mob rule. Bill Nelson, if you've covered him, is not exactly a mob rule kind of guy. I'm not sure if that kind of attack sticks there. Maybe a more generic candidate, maybe it does, but...
Last sort of question. I've been to a lot of these battleground states. You guys have been traveling to the battleground states. I think we make you watch every ad, Ben. What does it take to stick out? Because it is such a blur, I think, of so many ads. You can watch 3-minute commercial break and nothing political ads, and you feel numb to it. What have you noticed sticks out versus what doesn't stick?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these personal stories, I feel like, have been the ones that have been more successful. And you've seen them, we talked about the Democrats. I mean, there have been Republican stories. If we talk about trying to push back on the health care message, a lot of Republicans aren't doing it with policy as much as they are about their own personal story, about family
Larry
members.
Hogan has done a lot of that.
Yes, exactly. Larry Hogan in Maryland. A lot of other folks with their own relatives who are fighting pre-existing conditions as well. I think that's the kind of way these personal stories, because at the end of the day, voters crave authenticity.
What else has stuck out to you?
It's the timing. I mean, the thing is, you can't have a great ad and wait for the last 2 weeks of the election to be able to run it. The great introductory ones came months ago. If you have like your real great oppo, you want to have that in September and have everything else kind of play out. So to me, with this like full saturation, if you've got something good, you need to do it much earlier.
And there have been some that stuck out during the primary season that maybe didn't benefit the candidates in the general election. I'm thinking about Ron DeSantis running.
It's going to be the most memorable ad, one of the 5 most memorable ads of the cycle. And I don't know how often he really ran it more than that 1 week period before the primary.
Right, and embracing Donald Trump as much as he could. Brian Kemp did the same thing. And now you're seeing in the general election those candidates having to pivot very hard towards let's all work together.
All right. That's all we got here. Of course, over the last week, we're starting to see one last phase of the ad wars, the closing arguments, and that's where you're seeing a shift in tone. Some campaigns are ending with an aspirational message, like this one from Rick Scott.
You wouldn't believe the stories of wonderful people helping each other. They're not saying, are you a Republican or Democrat?
And some, like Ted Cruz, very late in the cycle, are suddenly trying to strip the paint off of their opponents.
Beto O'Rourke is more extreme than he wants you to know.
One of the little hints is if you're going negative late, that's not always a good sign for you. All right, that does it for us. Thank you, Mark, Kerry, Ben. We got to get the Ringer team together again. We have a lot more of these ads on our Rundown blog on NBCnews.com, including in-depth information about the ad spending and fundraising. Remember, if you don't put it on the air, no one's going to see it. And we'll see you here Tuesday night on NBC News and MSNBC for special election coverage. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.